USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, March 4th, 2020. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This episode is sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. When you look at the ECAC, it's a league full of tradition, and our guest today has been behind the bench at his alma mater for 25 seasons.
And joining us on this week's USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of Cornell, Mike Schafer. And Mike, what a finish to the regular season for your team. Not just another ECAC regular season title, but a 9-0 month of February. You really have to be proud of this team, the way they played down the stretch.
Well, I am. I'm proud of how they responded, after the Quinnipiac game. Quinnipiac's got a real good hockey team, and they play very well at home, and they took it to us in that game, and just the response after that to kind of right the ship to start playing the kind of hockey we had been playing before, and they carried that through. So, I think every coach wants the same thing. You want to finish strong at the end of the year, and we, all coaches talk about it. And I was just very happy that our players, were fully bought in, and they executed down the stretch with did a good job and a little bit of luck here and there, and you ended up being able to have that strong finish.
I look at the scoring that your team put forward, and I think they were held to 3 goals in a 3-0 win, but every other game in the month of February is 4 or 5 goals. And I'm looking at the number of players that were able to record goals. Morgan Barron with 5, Matt Steinberg with 4. You got a number of guys with 3 goals. You had some really balanced scoring throughout that lineup. And then I look at the number of games. Some guys, I think you had 12 guys play every one of the 9 games, but it shows the depth. You can have some ability to switch some players in and out of the lineup. Can you just talk about the depth that you feel this team might have?
Well, it's been our strength all year long, and we've got some really good players, but I think that definitely the strength of our hockey team, and I think that's been a little bit of a development of some of those freshmen, Jack Malone and Matt Steinberg and Mike Rigush and Max Andreev as sophomores, and Benny Berard as a freshman. They've all came forward and got the job done down the stretch drive here, and that's added on. And then there's other players like Kyle Betts and Jeff Malott that have also chipped in, and they've had good years. So, I think that overall, the success of our team is always going to go by our depth. So we've been very fortunate that those players have stepped forward and have contributed, and that's definitely going to be the strength of our hockey team going forward also.
Obviously, the last line of defense is the one that gets talked about the most, and Mac Galida in net. He was 9-0 in February, obviously, but a .925 save percentage over that time, a 1.34 goals against average. When you're scoring 3 goals or more a game, it's not bad when your goaltender's barely letting up a goal. Talk about how he's progressed this season. Obviously, he was a stellar goaltender coming back, but it seems like he's actually gotten better as a junior.
Yeah, I think that he came back his junior year, and I think he had worked extremely hard in the summer. He was an All-American as a freshman, and I think that, he just got caught off guard a little bit his sophomore year, and like a lot of sophomores can. And then he got hurt, and then he hurt his knee in our championship game last year, and I just think it refocused him. And I think that at the same time, down the stretch drive here, our guys got refocused on the defensive side of things. And, I thought our play was kind of slipping a little bit in the months of later in the part of January, and our guys kind of recommitted themselves to playing the kind of hockey that getting above people, and then lo and behold, our offense took hold. So Matt's done a great job. Our team defense has played very well in front of them over the last month and a half, and I said that we've reaped the benefits of both of those things.
We're talking with Cornell head coach Mike Schafer. By winning the Cleary Cup and actually just being in the top 4 in the league, you've earned a bye week into the playoffs. How are you making use of that extra weekend off?
Well, I mean, we're definitely getting ready for the playoffs, and that has to do with physically first and foremost of getting some guys healed up. That every team has it. I mean, there's not a team in the country that doesn't have some of their players that are banged up at this time of year. So that gives a chance to rest some of them. And the other aspect of it is, going right back to the fundamentals at this time of year, getting back into look at all the things that we need to, just address. And that's where we spend this week is, readdressing everything that we would if it was the first week of the season. And I think it just helps get guys focused and just a mental break, guys, not having to go through the grind on a weekend gives them a chance to kind of reload and to get ready for, what is really the stretch drive. And now it's a sprint. Everybody talks about it. It's not a sprint during the season, but now it's definitely a sprint. And, there's no room for any kind of error at this time of year, whether it's discipline or systematic or effort or whatever it may be. So guys are all getting ready for that.
A lot of our listeners, and probably most of them, have never had the great opportunity to visit Lina Rink. It always comes up in stories about the best hockey arenas to visit. What is it about Lina and its atmosphere and its fans that makes that a special place for your team to play?
Well, I think it's an old rink. I mean, it's in the sense of the beauty of it is that the fans are right on top of you. It's not one of these, a modern facility where it stretches out, and so it can get really loud, and it just feels like the fans are sitting right on top of you as a player that our team has that same feeling, and so it's an exciting place to play, and just a combination of years of tradition with their students. It's just a perfect combination of, the students, the faculty, the Ithaca community, all kind of relating to each other as far as having a college town, having a great time on a Friday and Saturday night. And they're very knowledgeable. And so we're very fortunate to, it's always been, one of the pillars of our success of our program is that we have great fans.
Back earlier in the season, you were quoted in an article as favoring an expansion to a full 34-game season for the Ivies. And we also had a chance this year on the podcast to talk to Ted Donato at Harvard, who also spoke in favor of that. Do you still favor that, and do you think there's a possibility of that happening?
Well, I definitely favor it. I mean, I favor getting rid of a lot of the archaic rules that the Ivy League has. I mean, it's I've been very vocal about that, and for me, it's just a lot of the rules that exist in the Ivy League existed a long time ago, and I think that student athletes today and they're so dedicated to the academic side and the athletic side that they're definitely intertwined, and to say that our athletes are going to get distracted, or our students are going to get distracted by playing more games as I said, it's just a kind of an archaic rule. Will it ever change? I don't know. I don't know how many more years I got doing this. I doubt it. The Ivy League presidents are pretty set in their ways, but hopefully at some point in time they look at it from a different lens, and they see that that is such an intertwined commitment to the academic and athletic side that they will open up and make some of those changes.
When we look at the ECAC Hockey and Hockey East are two conferences that have stuck to the traditional 2-point game and a 5-on-5 overtime and a tie. There's going to be some talk, and I'm sure this comes up with the committee, about trying to unify the overtime rules across hockey. Do you have an opinion on that, and what do you expect to see across college hockey or even just in the ECAC in that regard?
Yeah, I really don't know what we'll see across college hockey and what the leagues will come forward and bring to the table as regarding overtime. I mean, a lot of the merits for overtime, going to a shootout or a 3-on-3, and obviously it's I think people are looking for the entertainment factor with regards to it, and for me, just as I'm only one voice, but I'm a really strong believer. Whatever we use to decide in the regular season for the NCAA tournament, if it's going to be involved with 4-on-4, and that's going to be used to determine to get into the tournament, I just feel that the tournament should reflect that. So, if we play 4-on-4 to determine winners and it affects the RPI, then, when we get to the NCAA tournament, we should definitely play also 4-on-4 and in the NCAA tournament overtime. They should reflect the exact same mentality with regards to when you get in, that's what you play to move on in the tournament. So, but it'll be interesting what the body decides. And, as a committee, NCAA committee and the rules committee, obviously their work cut out for them in the future here, but it will be an interesting spring.
Speaking of the committee, you do have a few things on your plate, including Frozen Four site decisions coming up. How's that going in this term that you have right now with the committee, and how do you like working with the other members of the committee on these things?
Well, the committee is great. I mean, I think the good thing about being on the committee is they all have the interest of college hockey and the growth of it, and the integrity of college hockey, first and foremost in all decisions they make. And they're a great group of people to work with. I've been very fortunate to get to know a lot of the people that you typically as a coach you wouldn't get to know. And so as far as where the sites go to, I mean, they want the best for the student athlete. They want to make sure that, the crowds are there, and that's always a constant conversation and equity and parity and everything that it's always been bantered around. So I've been very fortunate to be on that committee with those group of people, because you just kind of feel like they take in everybody's consideration, the coaches, the fans, the schools. I mean, everything is everybody has a say, and I think that but the bottom line is that the integrity of the sport and trying to grow the sport and showcase the sport is always on the first and foremost of all the committee members. So it's been an exciting time to be on it, and so it's I look forward to continuing to serve on it here for another couple of years and see what happens.
More with Mike Schafer in a moment. First, a word from our sponsor, the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit, Michigan.
This is the USC HO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
Every time you show up, every time you make your presence heard, whether you clap your hands or stomp your feet, lead the chant or join the chorus. However you choose to be a fan, you make the game. The NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Visit ncaa.com/Frozen4 to get your tickets today.
We're talking with Cornell head coach Mike Schafer. And Mike, as you head into the playoffs here, it's a role you're familiar with, having the bye and having the week off. And advancing to Lake Placid has been something you've been fortunate to do the last couple of years. But obviously, winning the final trophy right at the end has eluded your team. Do coaches talk about that with their players? You kind of revisit some of that so you remember some of the things that didn't go right? Or is it those things you just have to kind of block out and try each year's team? They have to take an individual and unique approach.
Oh, we talk about it at the start of the year. I mean, I think that, our guys know. I mean, it's very, very easy to look back at last year. We talked about right at the start of the year that, you go into those things and you can't control that, we lost Jeff. We didn't have a very deep roster, and we can't control that, Jeff Malott got hurt in the first period. We can't control that Matt Collette, hurt his knee and had to come out of the game in overtime. All we can control is, coming ready and get focused for the game. And, I know that everybody wants to win a championship. I mean, there's not a team in the 12 teams that are left that don't think they can do it. And we're one of 12 that thinks that, we have a good shot at it. But, all we can do is control the things that we can control. And if it's you go into it and give yourself an opportunity is just to show up and play, and hopefully it gets it done. And we've done that for many, many years. And we just done the job during the regular season, just give ourselves the best opportunity to be a top seed. And now we just plug ahead one game at a time and just show up. And if it's meant to be, it'll be meant to be. And I think that's the mentality our team's taken, and as a coaching staff we're taking.
Coaches don't always like to compare one team to another, but as you look back at these last three teams, and you just mentioned as you get into certain situations, if you don't have the right depth, sometimes that can bite you. It sounds like you have more depth than ever this year. Is this maybe the deepest, the best team you've had of these three?
Yeah, it's obviously it's the deepest. I mean, there's no question. I think that but we had two years ago we had a pretty good deep team also, and a nice blend of a lot of guys. And last year was obviously the thinnest team that we had. So, but they all gave themselves a shot at it, and whether we were deep or not, all those teams had a good opportunity to win a championship. And I said we just didn't get it done. And I don't think that any of those teams have any regrets of how hard we played and what we did in those games. And I think that's the goal of this team, is make sure we don't have any regrets in going into the tournament, and just go back and play as hard. And the previous teams did that. And I think that's the thing that we'll compare, is that, even though that they didn't get the final trophy, there is definitely no regrets and how hard we played last year and the year before. And that's what this team has to duplicate.
Well, it will be a restful weekend, maybe a little bit restful, at least this weekend, as your team has the bye weekend. Next week, Friday and Saturday, and maybe Sunday if it goes to 3 games. We don't know your opponent yet. It'll be the lowest remaining team from the first round. But I know that it'll be a packed Liner rink. I know that you'll have a good atmosphere, and I know that your teams will be ready to play. So, Mike Schafer, it's always a pleasure to get to catch up with you. Thanks for taking so much time today to join us, and best of luck down the stretch.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care of yourself, and enjoy the rest of the season.
Jim, in the past couple of seasons, there have not been teams kind of walking away with terrific records. There have been a lot of jumbles at the top of the pairwise. This season, 2 teams really stand out, perhaps 3 if you throw in Minnesota State along with North Dakota. But Cornell has had a spectacular season.
They really have. And, I threw that question at Schafer at the end. Is this the deepest, the best team he's ever had? And I know he really liked his team a couple of years ago, and they didn't have the ending they wanted. I believe they lost in the semifinals in Lake Placid. Then they got bounced by a BU team that was pretty good in the regional. And, but when I'm watching this team, and I've had a chance to see them play in person twice this year, they really get up and down the ice well. They skate probably better than any Cornell team I remember in recent years. They have a lot of finesse. They have a lot of finishing. And we were talking about how many guys are scoring goals for this team. And it's not like a Boston College where you have an Alex Newhook or a David Cotton, just lighting the lamp night in, night out. This is more, a balanced attack. They have, basically 3 or 4 lines that can come at you and score goals. And when you have that degree, and then some defensemen that have a lot of offense as well, then you add into the mix a goaltender playing as well as Matt Galida is. I mean, everything is just seemingly going the way. Now, I don't want to jinx them, because as you just heard Mike Schafer say, it's been the end of the year each of the last 2 seasons where they've had some tough injuries. So you hope that you can get through the end of the season healthy. That's one of the big keys. But if they do, I have to think that they'll be a very tough out in the NCAA tournament.
Now, when you go back in history for Cornell, the way they are playing now and the style of hockey they play now is a great testimony to how Mike Schafer has been able to adapt the game as the game has changed. You think back to his team back in 2002 in Buffalo, and him in probably, I guess it would be his 7th season behind the bench back then, if you can believe that, with 25 now. But Cornell was known for being big and slowing down other teams and just being really defensive. Now, the game changed in a couple of ways. One, that kind of a game is officiated against. They've tried to take some of that obstruction and that banging guys along the boards and holding things up. They've taken that out of the game to a large extent. But the whole nature of the game has changed. It's just a speed game now. He has done a terrific job in adapting his game plan and recruiting a team to play in today's game.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And, he's gotten a very mobile decor. This used to be a decor that would just crush you. And they were big bodies. And that was how they kind of slowed teams down by using their size. You can't do that, as you kind of just mentioned and alluded to. In this decor, not only can they play really well and fast coming back into their position, but then their ability to transition the puck and move it and skate it and really make some skilled plays coming out of the defensive zone. That's what I like about this team. And they are one of the most talented teams I've seen in person this year. I have not seen North Dakota. That's my caveat. I think that they're a pretty good team too, and there's other teams out there that have a lot of skill. But I look at this Cornell team and think just how skilled they can be, and this is certainly going to be a fun stretch run for them if they can stay healthy and stay focused.
And I'm not going to be shilling here for the NCAA, but this is an honest opinion here. How fortunate the committee is to have a guy like Mike Schafer on it. We've gotten to talk to different coaches who are on the committee over the years. He's on there with Derek Schooley from Robert Morris and Mike Corbett from Alabama Huntsville among active coaches, and Mike Kemp, a former head coach at Nebraska Omaha, all on the committee. And when people talk about NCAA decisions and this and that, picking Frozen Four and so forth, it's not some bunch of faceless bureaucrats tucked away in a corner in Indianapolis. These are people who are very involved in the game, and we should be glad that people who are active in the sport are helping make these important decisions.
And I have to say, Ed, I like the way that the committee has progressed in recent years. They've gotten younger, more active coaches. They've, kind of left the need for having an athletic director. They've gone to a couple of deputy and associate athletic directors at some of these schools who really have great ideas, and they're forward-thinking people. I think that the committee right now is as strong as it has ever been in my 28 or so years, and knowing the committee as I have for probably about 20. And there's been some great committees in the past, and they've had great leadership, but this feels like they're very involved. They're very in tune from everything from operating a great tournament and being involved at the Frozen Four to understanding the issues that surround college hockey. You mentioned the overtime rule with Schafer, and understanding how that can change, how that's going to affect the game. They're going to be involved in that whole thing, and the committee will. So I think they've done a fantastic job and will continue to, because you have the right personnel in there right now.
They're going to need a new chairman. He'll be leaving his position about 6 months before the end of his term, Steve Metcalf, who's the new commissioner of Hockey East. But that's going to do it for USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, March 4th. We've been sponsored by the NCAA Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Detroit. For tickets, visit ncaa.com/Frozen4. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.